Even though Mary and Oliver McCaw Hall is built on the bones of the old Seattle Opera House, you never recognize it. McCaw Hall is swooping stairways, glass walls, and polished steel. Seattle Opera inaugurates McCaw Hall, its new home, with the company's first production of Richard Wagner's opera Parsifal. It's a demanding work, both musically and technically. General Director Speight Jenkins, set designer Robert Israel, and technical director Robert Schaub have been working for months to meet those demands. It's amazing to sit here with you in the brand new McCaw Hall. It's just so beautiful, and behind you is the set for the first and third acts, I believe, of Parsifal. Well, there's a lot of things that it's kind of like the alignment of the stars, this opera opening McCaw Hall. It's the 10th Wagnerian opera that you're producing as General Director of Seattle Opera. And I wanted you, I know it's probably too hard, but if you could quickly tell our viewers what goes on in Parsifal.
Well, Parsifal is the Grail legend. It's the story of a young man who is innocent, who learns compassion, and by compassion he becomes king of the Grail. Along the way, we have the previous Grail king had been wounded by a sorcerer who was trying to take control of the Grail, and the wound won't heal because he was lusting when he did it. There's a sorceress, a very important sorceress in it, who managed to seduce the old Grail king, and the big scene of the opera is where Parsifal rejects her. After he rejects her, he gains compassion for her problems and compassion for everybody else's problems, and so he goes on to take over the Grail.
The last big Wagner in the old opera house, I sort of feel like we're sitting on that hallowed ground, was The Ring, and you had asked for a ring that was set in nature. What did you ask Robert Israel, who designed this opera, and Francois Rocher, who directed it, to create for you?
I asked that it not be either one of the two extremes that Parsifal generally is in the world today. Either it's done as a Christ fable, with Parsifal as Christ, which I think is wrong in terms of the libretto, or it's done as many German productions do now, totally without any of the religious or mystical elements in it, as some kind of work of alienation, because the Germans at the moment are very negative to any of the Christian elements in Parsifal. But I think Parsifal, I don't think it's a Christian work. I think it has lots of Christian elements. I think it has lots of Hindu elements. It has lots of Buddhist elements. And so when Bob and Francois and I talked at the beginning, that's what I said. I said, I want to create a production that moves, if you will, this is a bad image, but down the middle. In other words, that has mystical elements, that is definitely religious, because no one raised in the Western, you don't have to talk about being a Christian or not a Christian. In the Western world, you can't hear this music and not think religious something with it, because because it has a religious sound to it. But it isn't really Christian.
This is an opera that consecrates a new building. It's the 10th Wagnerian opera that you've produced. It's the inauguration of a new era, I guess, your next 20 years, or at least your next 10 years.
No, thank you. Thank you very much. No.
You've been here for 20 years, and so for you, this must have added meaning.
Oh, it does. It has tremendous meaning to it. I mean, I don't know you can't put meaning into words, but I mean, I waited until this time to do Parsifal because I think it's the thorniest of all Wagner's works. It's the most difficult to do. It's the most difficult to get, well, you can't get anything right in Wagner. That's not the way to do it. But it's the hardest one to get a real statement on, that makes sense. And the funny thing about Parsifal, there's so many ambiguities in it that what you really have to know is the people who are working on it, the team that is creating it. We have to know what we're doing with it. The public then can go with what we've done any way it wants to, but if we don't know what we're doing, the public will never understand it.
You invited Francois Rocher and Robert Israel to collaborate with you on this production. These are two men that Seattle opera goers will know as creators of the last Ring cycle,
right?
The first Ring cycle that you produced, a Ring cycle that had all kinds of acclaim and criticism when audiences first saw it. Did you choose them particularly for this production because you knew that they would create something provocative, or because you respect their artistry? Or?
I think it's the artistry most. I mean, I have to go back to Bob Israel, and I agreed. 15 years ago at least, I told Bob that when I did Parsifal, he would design it. And it was logical to have Francois do it because I knew that Francois had done Parsifal once before, which was not necessary, but which was good, having done it before. And I just felt that his mentality, his thinking would be right for Parsifal, and I knew that he and Bob worked well together. No, we've never gone into anything. I mean, I feel like I've said this so many times, but we've never gone into anything to provoke anybody in what we do. And certainly this is not a provocative production any more than every Parsifal is provocative. It's just by the nature of it, it is. But I mean, this is a very, I think, a very strong reading of Parsifal, which I believe in.
You also, in your 20-year tenure at Seattle Opera, the theatricality has been almost as important as the musicality of your productions.
Almost, but never as much. Never more important. It's always 51% music in anything I do.
All right, that's almost half. So when you're choosing a director like Francois Rocher or the designers that you pick, is it because they're going to give something to the audience that other directors or artists wouldn't bring to opera?
Well, I think it's partly that, but it isn't. I don't think that way. I think in terms of the piece and what I know about the people. Does a director really have the inherent makeup to do a Parsifal, to think through Parsifal? I mean, you got to think through this. Is the designer, and above all, more important than anything else, are the people, with Parsifal more than most operas, are they willing to give the time to it? Are they willing to give the time to really think about it? Because a slapped-on Parsifal, which I promise you is what half of the Parsifals are in the world today, is not going to arrest anybody. And there are all sorts of Parsifals that where you throw, and I've seen them. I don't want to cite chapter and verse, but I can say it, where somebody says, "Oh yeah, that's a good idea. Throw that in. Yeah, that's a good idea. That's interesting. This is, this idea might work." But there's no cohesion to the ideas, and that's what I mean. And maybe people will say they will say that ours is not cohesive either, but at least we think it's cohesive.
What does this new hall allow you to achieve artistically? Clearly there's a lot of technical virtues to the place, but does it give you something extra artistically?
Well, artistically, I mean, we haven't heard it with the full audience in it, but artistically we think it's really in terms of the acoustics are amazing. And artistically it's also great because people do better when they are happy and they're in a happy situation. And the singers are comfortable here. The orchestra pit is like 1,000,000 times nicer than it was before. And these things help. From an artistic standpoint, they will help.
One thing that our viewers can't see that I can is that the ceiling is a lot higher. It feels like it goes up a whole lot.
Not here.
Not here? It's not higher here?
Not a bit higher here. No, it's higher on the stage. It's 20 feet higher on the stage, but here it's even the same ceiling, believe it or not. You wouldn't believe it if you looked at it, but it's the same ceiling.
It's the old ceiling?
It's one of the few things we didn't change in the house. It looks completely different, and it's there, but it is the whole ceiling.
So it's just bigger on the stage. Mm-hmm. Does that allow the voices to be bigger?
Well, no, what allows the voices to be bigger is the tremendous number of acoustic things that the acousticians have put in the house. There's not a round corner in this house. Everything is square. Everything is, which they know with acoustics is going to bounce the voices. So that the boxes on the side, in the back, everything is, everything is sharp cornered. So the box the sound bounces.
Have the singers told you how they feel about singing on this stage?
They are flabbergasted. They are told, the singers, to a man and woman, have said they've never sung in a place they like better than this in working in it. They can't get over it. Huh. They're just dumbfounded.
Because there are many singers in this production who have been here in past productions, Wagnerian and non-Wagnerian.
Non-Wagnerian, and they just, they're, Kevin Langen, who's singing one of the shorter parts, the part of Ticharel, the old man, in it, has sung, he has had a distinguished career and sung in virtually every major opera house in the United States, and he says, to him, there's no question, this has got the best acoustics.
Well, so it won't be, though, till opening night, when the audience is in here, that you will actually can let your breath out and say, right, this is it?
That's true, but it really, at this point, it's pretty clear. I mean, it would have to be a catastrophe, acoustical catastrophe, to make much difference at this point.
That's not going to happen.
And I don't think that's going to happen. I mean, that's what would have to, because we can hear what it's like. I mean, it can vary, a little bit up and down, you know, but I mean, it's just amazing what the sound is.
So where do you sit on that opening night? Where will you be?
Almost where you, well, I mean, nobody knows where you are in the television. I sit here in the right center on the 12th row.
And people will find you after the opera talking about it.
Well, where they find me afterwards talking about it is down in
your new hall.
In the new hall, down in the new lecture hall.
But you'll be there.
Oh, absolutely. And you know, when we did Tristan here in '98, we hadn't been doing the after-talk sessions for a long time, and I said to people, okay, now this is going to be the test. Do you really like this or do you not? Because Tristan's not going to get over till 11:45. And it was almost a silly thing to say because there are people that are interested in Wagner. We had the biggest crowds we ever had at Tristan, and of course for the Ring, they were huge. I mean, they were enormous. We had 700, at one point we had 700 people come for the Ring. We had, you know, virtually I don't know how much a quarter of the audience was there. But for these, so I'm sure that even though Parsifal gets out later, people will come.
And you'll be awake, ready to talk?
Oh, well, I'm not. You don't. You know, the thing about an opera is that if you are really involved in it, as I am in these things, you know, the problem is getting to sleep. But you know, it's like a singer. You don't get to sleep until 2 or 3 in the morning. I mean, because you're too up for the whole thing, you know, to go to sleep.
Well, congratulations on all of this, Speight.
Thank you.
Thanks for talking to me. Well, Robert Schaub and Robert Israel, the orchestra's coming in, we're sitting in the hall, and Speight, Jenkins talked a little bit earlier about an acoustic catastrophe, so I wondered if you two had the nightmares of acoustic catastrophes and what those might be.
I've never had one. I've had catastrophes, but as a designer, never an acoustical catastrophe.
I guess it's technical.
Oh, well, I worry about other catastrophes, not so much the acoustical. I think like Speight said, I heard what he was saying, and I think that we're pretty much assured that we're not going to have an acoustical catastrophe. But you know, you do live theater, there's always an opportunity for something quite big to go wrong, and in this particular opera we have big things.
Right, well, I'm looking at what looks like, and I'm sure it's not, but what looks like a giant concrete slab, and it's probably made out of something not concrete, right?
Yeah.
But it takes up the whole room, and it moves, it opens, and there's lights, and behind it are what look like photographs of mountain peaks. And is this technical wizardry, or is that what I'm seeing, and how did it get there?
Part of it's technical wizardry. Part of it is, whenever I go places, I take my camera. And I have a catalog, you might say, of images. And this is the backside of a mountain range. And then we took it and put it into the computer and manipulated it, and then didn't like it, and so we downloaded something from a satellite that approximated it. So it's everything is a process of going somewhere, but does that answer it?
Yeah, I think so.
It's a really fortuitous time for doing this kind of thing. When we started this Parsifal project, we decided to do the projections in a digital fashion, and quite frankly, they hadn't invented the projector with enough lumens to do that on the stage at that time. We were banking on the development of that to happen during the process of creating the Parsifal.
Now, you didn't have this capacity in the old Seattle Opera House, right?
No, this is the biggest projection of its kind ever done.
Anywhere?
Anywhere. From the distances that we're doing it from.
And it liberates the designer unbelievably and creates a kind of theatricality that you just can't get in any other way.
What were you imagining when you were creating what we're looking at now? Where were you thinking that this was?
Well, it's a really good question. It's a difficult question to answer because when you ask someone what were you imagining, it sounds like you're putting me on the couch. I think what I was imagining, first of all, is who these characters are and where they would exist. I wasn't trying to find a space, a real space that one finds in nature. I was trying to find a space that's loaded psychologically in terms of this opera.
If I'm not right, in the very beginning of this opera, one of the characters says, space becomes time, or time becomes space. And so do you take that to heart as,
Oh,
as
that's
the
absolutely.
men making
Absolutely.
That's exciting for both of us.
this? Oh, it is?
Oh,
Yeah, sure.
Well, so space is becoming time, or is time becoming space in this?
Well,
Pick your poison.
the Speight said to me in the very beginning of the work, he said, our biggest problem with Parsifal will be the transformations. And that's what got me thinking about going digital, because I knew then that the options were endless. The painted drops would still have, there'd be one drop flying out and another drop flying in, or they're coming from, but it's this language that we always see in the theater, and I felt that particularly in the new hall, with a fantastic work to open the hall with, to present something that people hadn't seen before, would be an interesting way to deal with this transformation problem. And like Bob said, with this image work, we could do anything. We could have played around with this for the next 10 years and never really finished. We'd still be working on it.
Yeah,
It would be fun.
I must say we've learned a lot.
Absolutely.
This has not only been a design experience for us, but we have learned how to use this, and perhaps, not perhaps, if and when we use it again, we would continue to learn and continue to expand the vocabulary of what we can do.
And you also created the costumes.
Yep.
So when you were talking about, when I asked you about imagining, you said, well, I can't imagine because you feel like you're on the couch, but
Oh, I don't mind being on the couch.
it must be, if it's not a concrete place in time, is it a feeling that you're trying to give me as the audience member in the seat over here?
No, as a designer, you're always trying to create an aura for the audience. I don't think the specificity of place is important as creating a playground that is particular to that particular work.
One thing, when people come to see this opera, they'll notice they see this big slab, and there's a kind of a triangular long black triangle that's actually a space where at least one of the performers resides or performs from. So it's not just a stage as a platform, but a stage as a whole world that you're putting up there.
It's a disjointed world, too. One of the weirdest things about dealing with Bob Israel's work is that he gives to us, the technical team, a huge geometry problem. You're looking at that. There is every compound, everything is going in a different direction, and then we bring large machines together with that have to break through, sometimes parallel to the stage floor, which nothing else is parallel to. And the math work that we go through to build that is pretty interesting.
How long did it take to build that?
About 8 months.
Wow.
Of construction time. We work on a project like this for 2 to 3 years.
Did you work together on The Ring? Mm-hmm. So you had a sense of...
We've worked together on The Ring and also on
And
Aida.
On Aida. So
So-
you have a sense of the way that Bob Israel's thinking.
I think we have a sense of how both of us work. And also, Bob has a great sense of how our shop works, how to relate to all the collaborators, because it's really much more than just us. There's the lighting people, and there's the people that are painting, and getting to know all of their talents, and then bringing that to his work. Bob brings that to his work.
This is also a relationship that, for me, is more than just a working relationship. These are friends, and I must say I find it just glorious to work here.
Well, the one unknown then for both of you is that this is a new hall with new capabilities, and just it's new for you. So
It's not a complete unknown, because
No?
we both worked through its planning stages.
Right, we were very involved with it.
Plus, it's kind of like saying, I hate to be analytical about it, it's kind of like saying to a doctor, okay, we've got a new operating room for you, it's an unknown. It's not an unknown. The theater, the proscenium theater, does only a few things. It goes up and down, in and out, and back and forth. That's all it does. It uses Newtonian physics. So what this theater does that the old theater didn't do was it made the possibility of doing those things in combination with one another easier and more dramatic. We were able to go up and down more and further. We were able to go in and out more and further, and we weren't able to go back and forth further. That's the one thing we weren't able to do.
But you know, the biggest danger, however, is that we were building this show in our shop at the same time that the construction company was building this place. We were given a set of drawings by the architect team, and they needed to be right, because we built some machinery for this opera that needed to interface with that. And so I think the most dangerous moments were finally verifying those dimensions, because it was getting awfully late in the game, and we couldn't start over if there were going to be some train wrecks there.
So you didn't have to saw anything off because it was.
We did a
totally
little
off.
bit, but none of it was beyond what I would consider normal.
I asked Speight when he could let out his breath, and it's like most of it is coming out in little spurts, but opening night, is it the same for you two?
Well, it's for the designer and director. I think for Francois and myself, it's a little different than it is for Bob and Speight, because in the beginning we have all the power. We talk about things, we imagine things, and then we submit ideas. We work with singers. They get on the stage. We slowly but surely recede, and by opening night we have none of the power, none whatsoever. It all resides on the stage. So in fact, right now I'm starting to relax. I'll never completely relax, because I empathize with the singers and with the people who are here permanently, with Bob and with Speight. But our job is pretty much coming to an end now, and I must say I'm feeling pretty good about it.
Well, you know, I want to speak to that a minute, because for me, I mean, sometimes I just wish, the term ignorance is bliss is really cool for an audience member, but I know what every machine needs to do, what every cue person is doing at any given time, and I know what the dangers are. And so I sit there the whole show fantasizing what could happen and willing it not to.
Thanks, both of you. As the people are coming in and the instruments are tuning up, it's time to rehearse.
Well, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.